With that, we'll move on to unfinished business. The first is review and consideration for approval of the Montessori Planning Grant. And we have the group that's done a lot of work on that.
Hello, I'm Amanda Boyning. I'm a parent of an infant and a toddler.
And I'm Rachel Linehan, and I'm the parent of a toddler currently, and in the future, more. We're on the planning committee for a planning grant for Tomah Area Montessori School. And like it was said earlier, it'll be the first public charter school in our district. So I'd like to talk about what that means. Charter schools are tuition-free public schools. They operate under a 5-year contract between the charter school and the district, and they can be renewed. Charter schools also have more freedom than a traditional public school in return for a commitment to meet higher standards of accountability.
So the charter school grants are a federally funded program that are administered by DPI through a competition. So traditionally about 40 schools apply. In the past, about half of those grants have been funded. This year, only 6 to 7 grants will be awarded. So it'll be very competitive. However, we think we have a pretty good shot because of some of the collaboration that we are planning to do between regional Montessori educators and within our district and the university. And also because most charter school initiatives come from within the school district, and DPI really likes to see parent-led initiatives, so that gives us a little bit of an edge also, we hope.
So for the past year, our committee has been working towards getting this planning grant together. We're applying for $150,000 in federal grant funds. Our application is due next month on the 15th. In early August is when they come out with the announcements as to whether or not we've been accepted. And at that time, we would start forming our governance board and design team, and at that point, they would design the school and start to negotiate the charter contract with you. In the fall of 2015, we'd open with 2 multi-age classrooms, the first being a 4 and 5K, and the second classroom being first and second grade, and that would move up to third grade the following year. And in the meantime, in April of 2015, we would go ahead and apply for an implementation grant, and that would once again come out in August, just whether or not we got that.
So we wanted to review just for a minute what Montessori is all about. The biggest difference between a Montessori classroom and a conventional classroom is that it's child-centered in the idea that you won't see the teacher in the front leading a group of students. The students are spread throughout the room, working together or independently, and the teacher is kind of in the background, guiding the students and observing what they're doing. Also, the classrooms are multi-age, as Rachel mentioned, and it's a very hands-on curriculum that focuses on concentration and problem-solving and perseverance.
We also put a lot of thought into the goals for Tomah Montessori, and the main things we came up with were that we want to see our students develop a lifelong love of learning, our educators to create a respectful, nurturing classroom. We want to increase the opportunities for family involvement. We want to be able to close the achievement gaps we currently have in math and reading. And also we want to collaborate with university educators and regional Montessori teachers to help retain Montessori certified staff and to benefit our district teachers as a whole.
So this might be your crucial interest, is the benefits of a Montessori school. We really believe that this school will increase enrollment for Tomah. Viroqua Area School District is 1 year ahead of us. They received the planning grant last year and they're beginning to open next fall. So they just had their enrollment period and they found, right now they have 46 students enrolled, and 20 of those students came from private schools, home schools, or out of district, so almost half. And based on our parent survey, we kind of expect we might get the same. Quite a few students who are enrolled either home schools, private schools, or out of district might come if we offer the Montessori school. Sparta area, or I think it's called
Lakeview
Lakeview
Montessori.
Montessori in Sparta. They started about 10 years ago with 32 students, and now they're well over 200 students. Based on our parent survey, we have a lot of families who expressed interest in sending their children to the school too, and we have more details if you want that. Montessori curriculum has been shown to raise the achievement for a lot of students, particularly those who may not be succeeding in the conventional classroom, or who just need a little bit more, or actually just learn differently. And Montessori has been shown to close the achievement gap. Especially in Wisconsin, Milwaukee Public Schools and Sparta have also noticed that the achievement gap between students who are economically disadvantaged and those who are not has been closing since they offered more and more Montessori programs. Another thing to consider, Sparta is our comparison because they're our neighbor with the Montessori school. Lakeview Montessori, their reading and math scores last year were higher than their district average and higher than Toma's too. And that's been the general trend in the last 5 years. So the school has been really performing quite well. Another benefit is that it will expand just choices for education because all kids learn differently, and this might be a really good fit for some kids.
This is Margaret McMurray.
And we'll also offer professional development. The grant comes with quite a bit of money to offer professional development opportunities for all the staff within the school district, not just the staff who might be teaching at the Montessori school.
So, all that remains for the completion of our planning grant application process is a school board resolution. So we're here today to ask for your support in the submission of a grant. So I'll say thank you in advance, in case you're already on board. And if not, we'd love to answer any questions you might have.
So the application right now is for the planning grant.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
And that in itself is $150,000. So we would take that to start planning our school, developing our, choosing teachers, going to get them certified, choosing a mentor school, someone that we can help us along the way, getting materials for our classrooms, those sort of things.
And that's the one that's due April 15th.
Correct.
Okay. Do others have questions about the program? My thought was we're having we have our board academy meeting. What's the date?
April 7th.
April 7th. And so we're still sort of considering the financial side of this. I mean, I can say personally, I'm a big fan of this movement. I had my children in Montessori for a few years. I'm familiar with it. And for many of the reasons that you said and that for what Mrs. Justinger mentioned, I think it offers choice. It's a very interesting approach to education. I think it could help our enrollment, which would be a great thing. So I'm on board, but I wanted to give the board an opportunity to, I know Mr. Gorder had given us some projections.
Right, and in a minute we'll talk about those.
Oh, we will, okay. And so I think that we'll sort of see how it goes, but I was thinking that the way that this would plan out is we're going to talk about these projections, give everybody time to reflect on those to make sure that given our current budget, we're going to see what plays out with the referendum, how seamlessly this would blend into our budget. We've got to face that reality of it too, but certainly the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish here, I'm all on board. So I hope you can appreciate that approach to it. But I understand the April 15th deadline.
Absolutely.
If people are going to have questions, if we don't decide it tonight, you've got to have those questions asked and resolved before April 15th. We can't be putting you guys in a bind.
We'll be driving it to deliver it there because
Okay.
it's our baby. So.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yes.
After the initial grant, are there other grants that you can apply for or that are available to you after the first initial grant?
The implementation grant would be the second phase of it. And just like this year, we didn't know that the planning grant funds, they weren't announced until almost after the beginning part of the year, which would be December. So they aren't for sure there. We won't know until usually the government tells us when they have the funds. So, but yeah, the implementation grant would be $150,000.
So you're not really sure about anything after the initial grant, right?
We don't have any guarantee.
Okay.
But we are going to talk about seeing if that's going to fit within our existing
Right.
budget.
The planning grant would be able to fund the first 2 classrooms. We would be fine with that. Our vision, as you'll read, has more classrooms, but that is our vision, that is a goal. We are very aware of the district's constraints right now, so we're just happy to see us start small, and when the budget allows for more classrooms and expansion, obviously we'd go from there to see what we can do.
Do most schools that get the planning grant then also get the implementation
Unless
grant?
you're not demonstrating that you're planning, the implementation grant is basically guaranteed. And then from there, you can also get a dissemination grant.
And how much is that?
Another $150,000. But the state of Wisconsin, and they need to reapply for their federal funds next year, and that's why there's no guarantees about future grants, because DPI needs to apply, and then they disseminate the money, so. They're at the end of I think it's a 5-year
They're on their
contract.
extension year actually this year, and that's why it's so competitive this year.
So other Montessori schools, though, have received those disseminated grants after the implementation. So that's
Right
possible.
now, we actually, at the DPI workshop for grant writing, the local representative was there, and she was just about to turn in her implementation grant, so.
That package you put together was fantastic. I mean, just all the different perspectives and facts that you put into that. Thank you. That was very compelling.
It's mostly her, she's been at home writing away.
Yeah.
We're in debt to her, so thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for coming.
The first document that we have pulled up here is basically it's coming back. A 5-year vision budget, okay? It's not what you would approve at any time in the future, because as they stated so well, they understand that the expansion and even the actual start of the Montessori school is really based on budgets. One of the things that I think when we look at this, and we need to know about this is based again on their vision. It's based on 7 classrooms over a 5-year period, starting with, I believe, 2, correct? Yeah. So when we look at this is for grant planning. The grant requires them to do a 5-year budget. So we sat down, I think it was it last Wednesday, and we put together, did some discussion, and got some numbers here to put together that 5-year budget. It does include the first $150,000 in the planning grant. So when you look at that, that's all this is. Because if you looked at it, like I started thinking about it initially when I saw the 7-year vision, and probably failed to read a little bit further where it said vision, you start to get nervous, because I think there's a real understanding with all of us that whatever we do going forward with this pending referendum, and whether it passes or fails, is going to be based on what budgets allow. Okay? So we will have to look at moving forward and even implementation based on what we have. And there's a variety of different ways. Mrs. Zardy could speak to those a little bit on how that could be accomplished. One of the encouraging things when we were talking with them on Wednesday and started to get some more information was the number of students that were in other districts that started applying for this. So if we look at that, basically, I believe Sparta has had enough enrollment where one of their elementary schools, I believe, is a Montessori school completely now. So to start seeing those numbers and to start to see the demand for the school is, very encouraging as to making it fit within our overall budget, because there are only X amount of dollars. And that's really what we discussed at length of how are we going to make this happen over the course of this year and through the planning grant. So the first thing to keep in mind is the first step of this is planning, and that's what you're actually approving. You're not actually technically approving a Montessori school, but obviously they put a lot of work into this project, and there's a belief that if we're going to approve this and move forward, then there's going to be a real effort on our part to make that happen. And I think that's something we also discussed at that meeting, so I think that's important to keep in front of us too here. So the next document is the PI 9600 in there. Is that open, Mrs. Doherty, or I can open that? Which is actually the planning grant itself, and you can see how they're going to expend that $150,000. And you can take a look at that and read through it, but I just want to get to basically the very last 2 pages. And you can see here Phase 1 and Phase 2, the dollars where they're going to be spent, and then you can see collectively both Phase 1 and 2 and what they will be spent on. You can see there's purchase services here, so at some point in time they can start allocating, but that can't happen until year 2, start actually purchasing supplies and equipment for those classrooms for startup costs. This grant will cover everything, and I'm not sure about the implementation grants, but this grant will not cover any actual instructional teaching costs. So in that first year, you're probably looking at 2 classrooms with possibly an aide for it. So that is the number that we're focused on as we move forward, as what we need to do to make work in the district budget. So the planning grant there, you can take a look at yourself, and if you have any questions, we certainly can answer them between now and the next meeting, or even tonight if you had any.
So to say it again, Greg, the
Please.
grant would not cover salaries for the first year. Whatever teacher we had.
This initial grant that they're applying for, this planning grant, will not cover any salaries or fringe for instruction. They will cover the implementation side of things, but the actual instruction they will not. So if you're looking at implementation in the second year, that's when we have to start looking in that previous year of how we're going to make this work within existing budgets.
So ideally, we don't know how it's going to play out, but ideally, if we had students going from a classroom into the Montessori and taking an existing teacher that's certified, and hoping that there would be no significant extra expense. That would be the ideal, I guess, situation, right?
Yes, that would be the ideal. Probably won't happen that way, though, as you
Okay.
think about, the Children's House, which is a 4K, 5K, you're pulling 12 students from around the district, potentially, that would move into that classroom from 4K and 5K classrooms. That may not be enough. That allows us to reduce a teaching staff. But on the flip side, if we're bringing in new students, that may generate enough income. It's just, we just don't know at this point in time.
It's a lot like the implementation of 4K. You have to see who's going to show up first before you know how many teachers you're going to need, how much revenue you're going to generate from students that are coming either from open enrollment back into the school district or that are coming from other districts into the district. And that's where you'll generate the revenue for that. Otherwise, you're just really transferring costs or funds from a student in a regular classroom into the Montessori school. But again, if you look at the growth both at Viroqua and Sparta, I'm the doubting Thomas whenever you ask anybody when it comes to new programs, because my mindset's always on dollars. and the additional cost for it. But certainly when we look at the growth that you saw in Sparta and even at Veralco in the first years, there's a great potential, mainly for the students, but not only for the students, but in maybe bringing some students back to Toma that are open enrollment, rolling, or homeschooling. So I think that's something that we have to keep in front of us from a financial aspect too. So there is room to bring in additional dollars, but much like 4K, where it took that 3 years to get the full benefit of that, that would be the same here. But the investment in the end in 4K was well worth it.
Did you have anything you wanted to add based on those questions? Those are just sort of the thought process we're going to go through between now and then our board academy. But I think to be clear, we need to have a formal decision at the
Board
academy, and so we will.
And we spent a lot of time at that last meeting just kind of making sure we were on the same page with expectations on dollar amounts, aids in the classroom, growth and all those different things. And there's a lot of work that will continue to be done in those areas, but I think that was our first chance to sit down and take a look at this. So it's again, very conservative with actually two classrooms, one in the children's house and then the E1 house. I got those right finally. So elementary one, I guess. E1. So we're off to a start here. So.
I just think it's important that as we look forward, we need to find ways to offer different choices for students. And this could potentially be a very good choice.
That's the feedback we got on the survey. There were a lot of parents that thought it would be a different option, a better option than children are currently getting. So not finding the traditional classroom setting is benefiting in some cases. We did have a comment from a homeschooler that she didn't think she was doing a very good job. So just interested in our school for that reason.
I just want to add one other thing. Nobody wants to see things stay the same more than I do,
right,
because it's very predictable.
Yeah.
But, the reality of it is that as with anything, there are more and more demands on public education to offer choices. And to not have offering choices, meaning that people will take advantage and go somewhere else to have that choice, because there are a lot of choices, and we'd rather keep them here in Toma than see them moving to another district or moving on.
Well, and that's certainly things that I've heard too from the public is what are we going to do about bringing back students that we're losing? Why are we losing those students? And those are all the things we have to be really aware of and looking for those ideas to bring our students back.
So having you vote on this on April 7th will fit very nicely into that whole discussion, because the Board Academy will also be covering the online efforts that we're undertaking and bringing you up to speed on that. And that, again, is another area that we're looking at to try to be bringing kids back into the Toma School District. I'd just really like to compliment the parents for their hard work. It was about a year ago, I think, that I had the first conversation with Tina. And I was a little skeptical. I'm like, okay, we've got some parents that are interested. We'll see if they really are committed to doing it. And they were. I sat in on a number of meetings initially and just let them go, was kind of there to answer questions, and they took care of it, and Patty attended some of the meetings more recently, as well as Greg, and they did the bulk of the work. They're committed to this, and I think it speaks volumes about their commitment to the district, because they're obviously concerned about not only their children, but children in general. They want to see our school district doing better with student achievement. They want options for parents. They want us to remain strong. So really appreciate all your work.
Greg, do you think that the numbers you've put together, if they weren't able to get the grants, I think we have to at least look at what that would, the outlay of costs that would be, even if we wanted to pursue this without the grants. I'm not sure we would, but just knowing that, is that essentially what you have here? Whether it's grant money or not grant?
if I'm hearing the question correctly, if we did not receive the grant, is this what it would cost to implement the Montessori school? I would have to defer that a little bit back to the folks that wrote the narrative. Probably pretty close. There's a lot of steps that you have to take to become certified as a Montessori school, and I don't know that there's a lot of areas for wiggle room in there. Certainly the classroom setups are going to be a big part of the cost as we go forward. But my thought is, as much as I understand our financial situation, I don't know in the end if students continue to leave us, how can you not afford not to do
Well, that's my thought.
something like this? So.
Well, and
And it would be, and again, we need to emphasize, at least from my perspective, is on the budget side of things, is the shifting of resources.
Right.
And that's what it would be. It's because the new dollars are not there.
And I can tell you from sitting in with the parents that they've talked about, if we don't get this grant from DPI, where else can we look? So they're committed to looking for additional resources to try to make this happen one way or another. Okay. So I'm sure their work would continue.
Okay, so this will be on the agenda then for the Board Academy, and we'll take formal action there. Thank you for your patience. Thanks for the hard work for trying to bring a great opportunity to the Toma School District.